Hello, everyone, and welcome tonight. My name is Glenn Rawson. I thank you for being with me tonight. As you can see, I'm not at home and not in my little studio in my office. I am actually in Salina, Kansas, traveling with another tour group on the Nauvoo Pioneer Trail. We're just about to head into Missouri and over to the trail. So we're camped tonight in Salina, and we'll be into Missouri tomorrow. Thank you for being here and for letting me join you every Sunday night. If my voice is a little raspy, it's because I'm going on a month and a half of straight talking, and I haven't had much chance to rest my voice. Just so you know, it is official. January of 2026 coming up, I will be taking a group of saints to Hawaii to study church history. We're going to go to many of the church history sites in Hawaii. Now, it'd be a great time for an opportunity for a vacation and a little education while you're down there. If you're interested in going with me to Hawaii to visit the sacred sites of Hawaii, go to glennrawsonstories.com and check out the Travel with Glenn tab, and I would love to have you. Sorry, hiccups. And then next month, we've had some openings, last minute cancellation kind of thing. We're going to Martin's Cove, and it'll only be a 3-day tour, only 3 days, out to Martin's Cove and back into Salt Lake. About as inexpensive of a trip on Mormon Trail as we can possibly get. There are still just a few openings left. The bus is almost full and would have been full, but we had a couple of people cancel, unfortunately. So if you'd like to go with me out to Martin's Cove to learn the story of the Martin and Willie Handcart Company and the glorious rescue of 56, call Dennis at 801-541-9760, and he'll give you all the information you need. Tonight, I ask for your prayers. 5 of the 6 stories I will share with you tonight are new stories. I hope they do some good. First story. In 1867, the Union Pacific Railroad was laying track across the high plains of Wyoming. The surveyed roadbed took it right up to and literally through a remarkable curiosity. They found a limber pine growing out of solid rock. The area is called Sherman's Summit and stands about 8,835 feet in elevation. Well, the track workers loved what they saw. They chose to preserve that tough little tree and diverted the railroad line to run right next to this curiosity. It is said that the locomotive firemen would stop their trains at Tree Rock and, quote, give the tree a drink. Then, in 1901, the rail line was moved a few miles to the south, and the old rail bed became a wagon road. Then in 1913, the Lincoln Highway passed right next to Tree Rock, as did Highway 30 in the 1920s, and finally Interstate 80 in the 1960s. When they put I-80 through, the lanes were divided and went around the tree like this, leaving Tree Rock as kind of a roadside attraction right between the lanes of the freeway. It is a remarkable and unusual sight. Now, what makes it even more remarkable is it stands near the highest point of the old Lincoln Highway. And at that elevation in Wyoming, it is a formidable climate, cold and windy. Not only that, this tree is growing out of solid granite, and it has been there for a long time. Evidently, that tree was either full grown or mostly grown in 1867. So How old is this tree? No one actually knows. It's a limber pine, Pinus flexilis, which is a tough, hardy, resilient tree that can live up to 2,000 years old. That tree, growing in that solid rock, might actually be older than America itself. Now, why do I tell you that? That tree caught my attention as we drove by it yesterday. Why does it matter? Jesus was once described by Isaiah as growing up as, quote, a tender plant and as a root out of dry ground, meaning that Jesus would be a growing, spiritually alive Son of God in a spiritually dead, hard-pan society. More than ever before, you and I have the chance to be just like Jesus. I want to be like that little tree, tough, hardy, flexible, spiritually alive, and beautiful in a world as cold and hard as granite in the Sherman Mountains. My dear friends, notwithstanding the hostile climate of the world we live in today, I want not only to survive, but to thrive under the Lord's care, such that everyone stands to admire you and me, just like that tree in the rock. And how do we do it? Notwithstanding what's going on around us, we put our roots down deep into the Savior. Next story. Joseph Holbrook once made a promise to his cousin, Mary Ann Angel, that he would have religion when the right kind came along, he said. On December 30th, 1830, in the town of Western, Massachusetts, Joseph Holbrook married Nancy Lamson. Together, they bought a farm near Wethersfield and started their life together. Then, in September of 1832, Latter-day Saint elders came to their community and began to hold meetings. Joseph went and liked what he heard. He inquired of those present, "Where can I get a copy of the Book of Mormon?" And they said they didn't know. I then told him, Joseph said, I would go 50 miles the next day to get one if they would direct me where. They said they could not tell me. I told them where I lived. If they could direct any elders there at any future time, they would be welcome, as I wished to learn more about this new revelation to man. End of quote. He wanted the Book of Mormon now, and he would walk 50 miles in a day to get it. Well, then Joseph learned that his cousin Mary Ann had a copy of the book, and he asked, would she lend it to him? Well, she said she would, but in 2 weeks. It was spoken for in the meantime. So Joseph asked, can I at least see it? Well, yes, she agreed. And Joseph said, and I quote, I saw the Book of Mormon. I read the testimony of the witnesses. I looked at some of the gospel. I felt it much rejoiced to think an angel had come from God and brought such good news. I thanked my cousin for the favor of seeing the book, hoping she would not disappoint me in my having the privilege of reading it in 2 weeks. As the 2 weeks passed away, I thought much of Mormonism, Joseph Holbrook said. I believed all I had heard or seen. I felt much to rejoice, for these words came often to my mind. Blessed are ye, for ye believe and have not seen. End of quote. Then, 2 weeks later, Mary Ann Angel brought the book to her cousin, Joseph Holbrook, and he said, quote, I commenced reading that evening, but being brought up not to spend any time on a weekday to read, I thought I must work. As my cart was in the field where I left it the day before, digging potatoes, I went to work, but soon found I could not content my mind. I returned to the house, took the Book of Mormon, and read a few hours. But as this was an unusual thing for me to stop work to read in the daytime, my wife became alarmed and thought I'd better be at work than spending my time reading such deception. This called my attention again to my potato digging, but I had not dug long before I wished with all of my heart to know all that there was in that book. End of quote. Couldn't let it go. Joseph went out and found a quiet place to pray and asked the Lord to lead him to do right and show him the truth. When that prayer was over, Joseph rose and said, quote, he would go to the house and read the Book of Mormon, work or no work. This was the after part of the day on Saturday. I read that day and night late. And on Sunday, I read again. My wife taking the child in the morning and going about 3/4 of a mile to my brother's, saying she would not stay in the house and listen to such nonsense. I read and prayed a number of times that day, being all alone, and marveled that my wife should be so disturbed she could not stay at home, for she was always fond of having me to sit down and read of evenings and Sundays. I read the Book of Mormon through in 2 days and 3 nights and carried it home on Monday morning to my cousin. She asked me what I thought of it, and I told her I believed it was true and that God was at the bottom of the work. End of quote. Then Joseph recorded this fascinating observation. He said, as there had been no meetings in this vicinity, I had to catch what I could from the Bible, as the Book of Mormon had been a key to the Bible to me, and it, meaning the Bible, was now a new book, having the seals broken and light, life, and salvation on its pages. End of quote. January 6, 1833, Joseph Holbrook was baptized. He and Nancy went to church the very next day for the first time. Nancy became converted, and she too requested baptism. And together, Joseph and Nancy Holbrook marched on into history. First with Zion's Camp in 1834, and then with Brother Brigham and the 12 on to Utah. True and faithful to the very end. I wish I would that all of us, you and me, desired to read the Book of Mormon that much, the way Joseph Holbrook did. Indeed, if we did, if we would discover also that it is the key to everything. It reveals light, life, salvation. It reveals the Lord Jesus Christ like no other book. Next story. You all know this story. Abraham wanted a son, and finally, in his old age, miraculously, that covenant son, Isaac, was born. Abraham rejoiced at his birth. And then came the day when the voice of the Lord commanded Abraham to take now thy son, thine only son, Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him up there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I shall tell thee of. Genesis 22:2. Apparently, without not a single hint of delay or procrastination, Abraham rose early the next morning and made his way to the mount, where he built the altar, laid the wood, bound Isaac, and placed him upon it. Abraham then raised the knife to kill his beloved son. Can you even imagine the feelings he must have been experiencing? How hard that had to have been. Now, at first glance, this whole story, this command from God seems cruel and illogical. Why would God ask such a thing, especially since all of the promises God had made to Abraham concerning posterity depended on Isaac? Could God have asked a loving, caring father anything more difficult than to kill his long-awaited son? A son for whom Abraham had such love that even God mentions it? And to ask such a thing, especially of Abraham, had to have been particularly repugnant, because Abraham too had once been laid upon the altar of sacrifice and offered up by his idolatrous father. Why then? Why did God ask such a thing of Abraham? Is he testing this man who has already given his all, just to test him, just for God's humor? Is there something that an omniscient, all-knowing God wants to learn about Abraham? No, such a thing is ridiculous. So why then? By this act, Abraham proved before all heaven and angels that he would do all and everything God commanded. At that last moment, the angel intervened, stopped Abraham, and offered him the ram in the thicket. It is telling what the angel said, speaking on the Lord's behalf to Abraham. Quote, "Now I know that thou fearest God, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me." Genesis 22:12. To me, the critical word in that verse is withheld. God has promised you and me all that he has. He has designed to crown each one of us with more glory, honor, power, might, majesty, and dominion than we can possibly comprehend at the present time. But he can only do this if we're willing to trust him completely and not hold anything back. Give him all of us. How can he give us all that he has, worlds without end, if we're clinging to the things of this world? Give it up. Give it all up and go to God. Abraham's quick obedience brought a quick response from heaven. And the Almighty renewed a sacred and special covenant in Abraham that would encompass all the human family, past, present, and future. Abraham, from that point forward, became known as the father of the faithful, meaning anyone, then and now and into the future, who goes on to receive celestial glory will be of the family of Abraham, his sons and daughters. My dear friends, when you and I come before the altars of God and consecrate, in covenant, consecrate all that we have and all that we are and hope to be, the covenant of Abraham is made anew in us and with us. And in honoring that covenant now, withholding nothing from God, the day will come, brothers and sisters, when he will withhold nothing from us. Let's take a break. How are you? I hope you are well. I hope you are happy. I hope that you are reading the Book of Mormon every day, drinking deep. I hope that your prayers are close and intimate with real intent, pouring out your heart to the Almighty. I hope that you know that the most important thing you can do every day in your life is seek after the Holy Ghost and honor and obey your covenants. I hope you know that. How are you doing? Okay, it's official, guys. I am going to Alaska next summer. My wife and I are taking a group of you and going to Alaska in June and July of 2026. This is unlike any other Alaska tour. From Alaska and Anchorage, by luxury train up to Denali, then up the mountain to Denali itself, and then on to Fairbanks, and then fly over into the Canadian Yukon and explore the history of the Yukon Gold Rush and see the beautiful country of the Yukon, and then on into Skagway and down and get on the cruise ship and come down to Vancouver. The scenery is breathtaking. The wildlife is awesome. The history is fun and exciting. 2 weeks in Alaska. Come with me next June and July 2026. If you're interested, I'm inviting you. Call Fun for Less at 801-619-1022. 801-619-1022. Now, I have a new book coming out for which I'm indebted to many of you. The book is called Prayer Brings Miracles. It's coming. It will be here very soon. If you like short stories, inspirational stories about the miracle and power of prayer, well, I think you'll love this book. And if nothing else, read it to your grandkids. It will be here soon. It will be available at glenrossenstories.com. Next story. The tour that we're on right now is the Pioneer Trail Tour. And in a couple of days, we're going to be going across that trail from the banks, the west bank of the Mississippi, all the way to This Is the Place Heritage Park in Salt Lake. It's a fascinating tour. It's a wonderful trail. Hundreds of stories along that trail. And this is one of them that I just found. And I tell you this story because I want you to have a balanced understanding of what going across that trail was really like. Jane Thompson Mackenzie was born 27 February 1838 in Edinburgh, Scotland. When she was 14 years old, she and a girlfriend went to listen to Latter-day Saint missionaries preaching in the streets. Both girls believed the message they heard and were baptized. And because of it, both girls were disowned by their families. They now had nowhere else to turn except their Ward family. So the two girls emigrated to the United States. In 1859, they joined up with the George M. Rowley Handcart Company. Jenny, as she was known, left the following account of their journey. This one day, I want you to hear. She said, "We walked many miles in the heat of the day, footsore, weary, and tired, but hailed with delight the end of each day when we might camp on a cool riverside or sit beneath the shade of a prairie tree. Early and late we traveled, pulling and pushing our handcarts. Day by day we gathered buffalo chips, carrying them in our aprons to use for fires by which we prepared our food. When night came and supper over, we would gather round the campfire and sing the songs we loved the best until far into the night when we retired. One time, when we were camped by Chimney Rock, a herd of buffalo came in sight. Nearly every man in camp started after the herd with some kind of weapon to slay a buffalo. The herd started to run, and the tired men were compelled to give up the chase without killing a single animal. There were Indians close by who watched and laughed at them and told them to stay in camp, and they would kill the buffalo. The next morning, they surprised us by bringing into camp 2 fine, fat buffalo and gave them to the captain to distribute among the company. All the Indians asked in return was their breakfast, which we willingly gave to them. End of quote. Once again, I share this humorous visual story to illustrate this is what life was like out on the plains for the handcart pioneers. Okay. Now, my dear friends, given the tragic events of this last week, I want to share a powerful but hard story. No government or persons or group of persons have the authority or the right to control or constrain the conscience. Kings, presidents, rulers, special interest groups, parties, and individuals, no one has the right to control what you believe and how you worship. It's a God-given right. We are agents unto ourselves and free to believe as we choose. Similarly, it follows that as we believe, so we must be allowed to speak according to our heart. How can it be otherwise? And as long as my speech and my practice of worship does not infringe on your freedoms, leave me alone. Story. Maud de Braose was born in France in 1155 AD. Sometime after 1166, she married William de Braose, an English lord of many lands. Then, in 1199, Richard the Lionheart passed away, and John, his younger brother, rose to the throne of England. At the time of King John's coronation, William is said to have been a favorite in the courts of King John. Then, in 1208, William and the king, King John, had some kind of a falling out. It could have been because John unjustly demanded money of William. Or it may have been because King John, whose habit it was, demanded of William and Maud their oldest son as a hostage to guarantee the family's loyalty. It was something that John did often, taxed the lords when he felt like it, took their sons as hostage to guarantee their loyalty. Whatever the case of the dispute, Maud, who was known to be uncustomarily brash and outspoken, responded to the demand of the king for her son, saying, quote, "I will not give my sons to your custody, for you basely murdered your nephew, Arthur of Brittany, whom you should have kept safely." End of quote. Now for context. Nobody ever believed that John would ever ascend to the throne of England. He was the fourth of 4 sons and largely considered unfit for the throne. But with the untimely death of all of his older brothers, and lastly, Richard the Lionheart, John became the King of England. However, John's older brother Geoffrey had left behind a son, Arthur I of Brittany. Many believed that Arthur should be the rightful heir to the throne, not John. Well, in 1203, young Arthur was taken by his uncle, King John, and then, without explanation, Arthur disappeared. It is widely believed that John murdered the lad. Maud's accusation against King John angered him, made him furious, and he sought vengeance. He seized all of the family lands. In fear, the family fled towards Ireland. John pursued them relentlessly, and Maud and her children were captured in Ireland in 1210. Maud and her oldest son, William, were brought back and imprisoned in Windsor Castle, John's home, but according to some, were later moved to another castle in Dorset, where they were denied food, locked up and denied food until they starved to death. The word of their cruel deaths spread across England and outraged the English nobles. For this tyranny and more like it, King John was brought to Runnymede and forced in 1215 to sign the Magna Carta, which contained this clause, number 39. No man shall be taken, imprisoned, outlawed, banished, or in any way destroyed, nor will we proceed against him or prosecute him, except by the lawful judgment of his peers or by the law of the land. End of quote. Now, the reason I tell you this story. In 1791, history afforded James Madison and the founding fathers of America more than sufficient evidence that freedom of speech and due process of law must be protected, lest there be more travesties on eternity, more Maud de Braoses in America. Brothers and sisters, heaven forbid that anyone else dies in America for their opinions and religious convictions. Last story for tonight. Sternella neglecta. Sternella neglecta. It's Latin. Sounds quite impressive when you say it that way, but what does it mean? Well, it's the name of a little bird, one of my favorite birds in the world. It's called the western meadowlark. Can you hear him? Some time ago, I was out running. It was in the spring, and I heard the sound of the meadowlark across the way. From years of experience with that bird, I knew just where to look. I turned toward the sound and looked for the highest thing in the area, and sure enough, in this case, it was a tall sagebrush, and there he was, right up on top, singing with all the gusto that meadowlarks are famous for. Now, did you know that this beautiful bird, the western meadowlark, is the state bird for 6 of the United States? He's a member of the blackbird family, and he is one of the most popular birds in the American West. It has become an annual tradition for me to celebrate, usually I'm out running, the first hearing of the meadowlark in spring. I am tired of cold and freeze and ice and winter. I can't wait for spring and to warm up. And then I hear him and it sends a thrill through my soul. Winter is over. Spring is here. and he is the harbinger of spring. I feel to celebrate. Sometimes, and I can whistle right along with him. His is one of nature's all-time favorite songs, top 10, if you will, since the pioneers. Now, here's another part of the story. The meadowlark was actually described in 1805 by Lewis and Clark on their expedition. For the longest time, though, it was believed that the eastern meadowlark and the western meadowlark were the exact same bird. But then in 1844, John James Audubon determined that they were really two different birds. Hence, because the western meadowlark had been neglected for so long, being identified, Audubon named him Sturnella neglecta, the neglected lark. Now, I love birds, but that's not the reason why I'm telling you this story. There's a Christ-like trait embodied in this bird that we too often neglect. What is it? Boldness. Boldness. When you hear a meadowlark singing, look for him on the tallest perch. It will likely be a male staking out his territory and declaring his presence. He wants all the world to know that he's there. There's a boldness and an enthusiasm embodied in the song and stance of the meadowlark that seems to say, "Fear not, stand up, love life, and sing loud." I love the meadowlark. That bird does more than just fill space. He improves it. Thank the Lord for a bold little bird announcing better days ahead. We have heard quite enough these days from the pickle-sucking magpies. It's time to hear from the meadowlarks. Go be one.